This video is sponsored by Skillshare. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare Premium. They say that the music that comes out when you're 14 years old is the most formative of your life. And as someone born in 1993, a lot of good music came out the year I turned 14. Arcade Fire were continuing to establish themselves as indie darlings with Neon Bible. Radiohead were cementing their legacy as shape-shifting rock legends within Rainbows. And Kanye West was continuing his ascension to greatness with Graduation. Today, I love all of these albums, but I would be lying if I said that was what I was listening to at the time. Because when I was turning 14, I was knee-deep in my first true musical obsession, pop punk. And I think that despite all the attention it got in a moment, pop punk is a movement that's largely been ignored or forgotten by the critical press since. So consider this video a long overdue celebration of a deeply underrated genre. Now let's do that whole let's take a closer look thing. If you ask a lot of people around my age range, I don't think it would take you long to find someone who knows all of the Fat Lip rap section by heart. Or someone who has cried themselves to sleep listening to The Middle by Jimmy Eat World. It just takes some time, and I know for a fact that if you hit a G note on a piano with just the right reverb, you can get a whole room of millennials belting Welcome to the Black Parade in mere moments. When I was young boy, my father took me in. Yet whenever critical circles talk about the 2000s, the discussion is always based on garage rock, indie, and hip-hop. Now, there's certainly some understandable reasons why. Pop punk can be melodramatic.
I tried to be perfect, but nothing was worth it.
It can be misogynistic.
Girls don't like boys, girls like cards and money.
It's often immature.
Give it to me, baby. Give it to me, baby.
And sometimes it does this.
Where are you? And I'm so sorry.
But a lot of these issues, especially the misogyny, are reflections of the era that it came from. I don't want to undercut this. It is a serious aspect of the society that I grew up in, and we all need to acknowledge that. But at the same time, this issue was prevalent in pretty much all of the music at the time, and we haven't written 2000s hip-hop out of our critical canon like we have pop punk. So with this video, I want to acknowledge that while there are many flaws to pop punk, it's also a genre that kicks some serious ass. Sure, it's a genre full of immaturity, but it's also a genre that wasn't afraid to get goofy.
I dread the thought of our very first kiss, a target that I'm probably gonna miss.
That was not here!
Let's go!
And at the same time, it's one of the only movements that made serious protest music against George Bush and the War on Terror.
Don't wanna be an American idiot!
And for all its melodrama, if you take a minute to scrub off this thick grime of irony that we've all developed in our current hellscape of an existence, and try to take pop punk at face value, even its whiniest songs are often really sincere stories of artists opening their hearts to the world.
I need somebody and always this sick, strange darkness comes creeping on, so haunting every time.
Okay, so I don't think I can go any further in this video without setting some parameters for what I consider pop punk. Wait, what's that? Genre is fundamentally arbitrary and only really useful for getting us on the same page as a topic, so defining hard boundaries for something that's really more of a vibe would be useless? Well, that's great. But just in case you're not on the same page yet, I'm going to be mostly talking about the pop-punk bands that ruled from the late 90s to the late 2000s. Some of them might brush up against other genres, and if you want to write a 2,400-word treatise on why I Write Sins Not Tragedies is actually Baroque pop and not pop-punk, then that's what the comments section is for. A good rule of thumb is that if a band went on a Vans Warped tour in the early 2000s, they're probably pop-punk. I'm talking about the kind of bands that you'd watch on a CRT TV in your grandparents' basement tuned to Much Music. That's Canadian MTV, in case you didn't know, and we had video on trial, so it was objectively better. I think that the music television aspect of pop-punk is something we don't talk about enough today, because pop-punk is a genre that was pretty much inseparable from the age of MTV. Circulation on a channel like MTV could absolutely transform your career, and to get that circulation, you needed an entertaining video. For bands like Blink-182, this meant approaching videos with a sort of gonzo irreverence. What's My Age Again had them streaking through the city, and Rock Show has them handing out money to passersby on the street, or as we call it today, the Mr. Beast approach. Then there's All the Small Things, which is a campy send-up of a lot of the boy band video tropes that would have been circulating at the same time. These sorts of videos are filled with a sort of self-effacing charm, and honestly, every time I watch Fall Out Boy dork it up in the Dance Dance video, I can't help but smile.
It's a dance, you know, and I don't know if you wanted to dance.
You always fold just.
Some of the best acts of the era were able to use this type of comedy to make real artistic statements as well. The bridge to Green Day's Holiday video is honestly stunning imagery, with burlesque dancers in front of stylized bombers as Billie Joe Armstrong rails into the American military-industrial complex. Beyond the comedy, a lot of these bands had seriously grandiose visions too, and they were able to execute on them. Look at Jesus of Suburbia, an 11-minute narrative video that was engaging enough to find regular play on music TV channels, while also serving as a fantastic depiction of the fears and anxieties of a lost generation. Meanwhile, bands like My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco leaned into theatrics and created iconic aesthetics for their videos. As much as we might like to laugh and cringe at some of these looks, they're honestly beautiful. The weird circus aesthetic of I Write Sins Not Tragedies is delightful, and then there's something like Welcome to the Black Parade, which, I mean, just look at this. It's fantastic. These days, I think that My Chemical Romance, and Welcome to the Black Parade especially, might get the critical acclaim that it really deserves, but the kind of storytelling and gravitas that they brought to the genre has always been there, even if it wasn't quite as easy to spot. Behind Blink-182's jackass-style aesthetic and frat bro tendencies are genuine, beautiful songs. Look at Adam's song, an empathetic reflection on the pains and fears of being a teenager. It's a song that seems to have a character contemplating suicide, an experience that is sadly all too common for modern teens.
I never thought I'd die alone. Another 6 months I'll be unknown. Give all my things to all my friends. You'll never step foot in my room again.
But by the end of the song, Blink-182 built to a triumphant final chorus. One that hasn't solved all of the problems, but one that has hope for tomorrow. And all of this is on an album called Enema of the State. Pop punk, man. There's nothing like it. And while I'm talking about songs targeted at helping teenagers, can we just have a moment of praise for Jimmy Eat World's The Middle?
It just takes some time, little girl in the middle of the ride.
that sometimes as adults, we look back on the media that we consumed as teenagers, and we forget just how much it meant to us. And I think that we forget how much it can still mean to us. Because as far as I'm concerned, that song's lessons of self-love and authenticity are as applicable to any adult's life as a 14-year-old's.
Live right now. Yeah, just be yourself. It doesn't matter if it's good enough for someone else.
Or how about Sum 41's Some Say, a song about fighting off that overwhelming temptation toward apathy in a world that you feel you can't change.
Believe me, 'cause now's the time to try. Don't wait, the chance will pass you by.
That's something that I think we all can relate to today. For a movement that had a lot of irreverence in it, pop punk was also incredibly sincere. It was sincere about adolescence, sincere about human relationships, and often sincere about fighting for a better world. Look at The Kids Aren't Alright by The Offspring, which tells the story of kids in a working class neighborhood growing up to find their American dreams unfulfilled, many of them struggling with addiction and mental illness.
She committed suicide. Brandon O'Dean died. What the hell is going on? Cruel stream reality.
These are the sorts of problems that still plague low-income communities to this day. And of course, this being pop punk, that song comes immediately after Pretty Fly for a White Guy on the Americana album. While songs like Pretty Fly might wander a bit from pop punk's punk rock roots, the political ethos of punk was still alive and well in a lot of the genre's best albums. Green Day's American Idiot is obviously the clearest example of this. It's a full rock opera dealing with alienation in late capitalist America and throwing challenges to imperialistic warmongering.
Welcome to a new kind of tension all across the alienation. Everything isn't meant to be okay.
Sum 41 took on Bush-era America as well throughout their criminally underrated third album, Chuck. That album begins with a run including No Reason and We're All to Blame, songs that warn of impending collapse, but also encourage the audience to look inward at our own participation in destructive systems.
How can we still succeed taking what we don't need? Selling lies, alibis, selling all the hate that we breed.
Both these songs, we see some of the genre bending of pop punk as well, with Sum 41 comfortably verging into metal. And really, all of this is just a bonus, because the one thing that pop punk did better than pretty much anything else of its day was nail a chorus. I mean, just listen to this.
Going down, around, and sugar will going down swinging.
Or how about this one?
I chime in with the haven't you people ever heard of closing a goddamn door, no?
Or of course, the time course. There's this.
He was a skater boy. She said, see you later, boy. He wasn't good enough for her.
Hell, Olivia Rodrigo topped charts earlier this year with a chorus that bears resemblance to Paramore's Misery Business.
Stay without me, baby.
Like a damn sociopath. Whoa, whatever makes it break. But I got it where I want it now.
Pop punk choruses are designed to be shouted at the top of your lungs as you dance around your bedroom with your friends. They're designed to get stuck in your head for days and have you playing them on repeat on your iPod. Because at the end of the day, pop punk was pop. It was music that was meant to be fun, meant to be catchy, meant to be something you could dance and sing along to. And it was damn good at that. When I was a teen, these shoutable choruses, these complex emotions painted with simple words, this lighthearted immaturity really spoke to me in a way that no music had before. One of the very first CDs I ever bought with my own money was All Killer No Filler. I bought it shortly after moving to a new country, and it genuinely helped me cope with the strange world that is teenagehood. In doing so, it helped spark a love for music that would culminate a decade later in me starting this channel. I think one of the reasons that pop punk speaks so well to teens is because it's filled with themes of alienation. It's music by outcasts for outcasts. And really, at some point or another, everyone has felt like an outcast. And by speaking to outcasts, pop punk cemented its place in a lot of people's hearts, even if it didn't do the same for some music snobs. A generation later, the impact of pop punk is being felt once more. In the middle of the 2010s, rap artists like Lil Peep and Juice WRLD started to embrace their pop punk and emo influences, starting a new, wildly popular subculture of emo rap. And more recently, acts like Machine Gun Kelly and Willow Smith are crossing over into the pop punk world. Then there's 21 Pilots, one of the most interesting bands in the mainstream right now, who have clearly pulled from pop punk aesthetics. Beyond the mainstream, the ethos and aesthetics of pop punk have persisted within the genre as well. One of my single favorite albums of the last few years is Jeff Rosenstock's Worry. I came to this album late, with my good friend Middo showing it to me earlier this year. Check out his channel for a video on it, by the way. Honestly, Worry blew my mind and has really renewed a lot of my love for pop punk. It takes the musical tropes that I loved so much growing up, but matches them with more adult and more contemporary lyricism. The entire album is a giant statement about trying to understand how to live and how to love in the cold, heartless, and utterly demoralizing days of climate change, rampant capitalism, and internet fascism. And the whole thing ends in an Abbey Road-style medley that walks you through the stylistic history of punk in the process. Seriously, I'm not doing this enough credit in just this little statement. Listen to Worry, and while you're at it, go back and listen to some of those songs that you used to blast as a teenager too. And if you didn't blast them as a teenager, or especially if you're a teenager now, well, then I envy you for what you're about to experience for the first time. Because pop punk is something very dear to my heart. So I think it's time that we revisit pop punk. It's time that we acknowledge that it was a genre that produced several masterpiece albums and even more impeccable songs. Because honestly, pop punk just kicks ass. And it's as simple as that. There was so much great pop punk that I wanted to talk about that I couldn't fit it all into this video. So if there's any songs you think that I missed, or if there's anything you disagree with about my take, why not take a crack at making your own love letter? Or hate letter, for that matter. Either way, a great place to start is Philip D'Amico's 2D motion graphics class on Skillshare. Philip is the brain behind Volksgeist, and in that class he'll teach you many of the techniques that I used in this very video. I honestly love editing video, and I think a lot more people should give it a shot. But if you don't think that's up your alley, there's a lot more where that came from. As I'm sure you've probably heard by now, Skillshare is an incredible learning community with thousands of courses on all sorts of topics. If you've ever considered giving it a shot, now is a great time, because if you follow the link in the description, you can get a full month of Skillshare absolutely free. That means you can learn indoor gardening with Ekta Chaudhary, or portrait photography with Jessica Kobesi. Or, if you're like me and have a hard time getting yourself organized, you can create a system for yourself with Thomas Frank's Productivity for Creatives. Really, there's so much to learn, and I can't recommend Skillshare highly enough. And again, if you follow that link in the description, there's absolutely no cost to you for an entire month. So why not give it a shot and learn what you can learn? Thank you all so much for watching.